It's here! DaVinci Resolve 20 is officially in public beta and available to download from the Blackmagic Design website under the support section. The question is, does it live up to the hype? Now, this video is coming out a little bit later than I had originally planned, but there already seem to be quite a few videos that just read through a list of updates. I figured before I give you my opinions, I wanted to really get my head around the new features, and I wanted to talk to some of the developers at Blackmagic, as well as some of my fellow trainers to really get the lowdown of how it works. And so last week, I decided to get on a very early flight from here in Portland, Oregon, and head to Las Vegas for the annual NAB show. I was able to talk to some of the Blackmagic staff, as well as some old friends that some of you might recognize, like Mr. Alex Tech, Darren Mostyn, and Daria Fasoon.
I guessed one or two things, but it was like stupid little things like, oh, a new UI for vertical video, that would be nice. Having a text box, and little things like that. I'm like, oh, nice little quality of life things. But then it's like, oh, also we're gonna be able to train a voice, and cut your script for you, and it's just like.
I kind of suspect it might be even more next year because the way Grant announced it, he was like, oh yeah, we've been spending like the last 2 years just rewriting all the code, from the ground up, and I was like, wow, okay. So that's been like a substantial fraction of their coding stack just working on like the base code.
Yeah, we were kind of saying before the show, we hope that all the work we've been doing in it vindicates some of those guys that took a risk a few years ago. I mean, it was like 5 years ago was the slowest in it because it was 32-bit, flowed and all this kind of stuff. And it was like, because it was a real hardcore color corrector and it was a Hollywood DIT thing. And then it's like, okay, it's moved along. Now we're the fastest because we did all this, optimization, rewrote the whole pipeline. I mean, last year when we did replay, that was because the UI guys were free because all the processing guys were busy.
Right.
So they're all rewriting codes. All you have is UI guys. We're like, okay, if we only have UI guys, let's do just UI tweaks. So that's why we did that, because it freed up all the processing guys. But now they were free, and look what they've done. I mean, they're insane.
I was expecting 19.5. Like this jump has been kind of insane.
But it's really kind of like 21 or something.
Yeah.
Because we had a plan in December that we're targeting, and then we had all these extra things, and then it sort of kept coming through. Like, oh my god, that's working. Then it's this massive update. All we've done helps the guys who took a punt on us.
Yeah.
So particularly when they're in big companies, look good inside those companies.
Okay, my original plan for the rest of this video was to do something of a vlog and interview the Blackmagic folks and get them to walk us through the new tools. But it turns out I'm not built for Las Vegas, and within a couple of hours I started to lose my voice, and I couldn't bring myself to upload a video to YouTube where I just sound like British Marge Simpson. So instead, I'm just going to give you my first impressions here in the edit suite, and in the coming weeks, I'll start making videos that are more of a deep dive into some of the tools, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. There is a lot to go through. There's something like 100 updates, and I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them. I'm going to show you some of the things I love, some of the things I'm not as impressed with, but I'm going to start with a couple of things that might be considered a little bit controversial. There's a lot of AI tools that have been introduced, and the first one I want to mention is the AI set extender. This generates new visual content based on a text prompt. It's a bit like generative fill, which you might have used in Photoshop. This isn't actually in the public beta that's available right now, and after watching it in the room, I completely understand why, because I watched 3 different people try to demo this live and it crashed every single time, so it's clearly not ready for prime time just yet. Which reminds me, and I cannot stress this enough, this is a public beta. There will be bugs and there will be crashes. We're not going to install it on any of the machines here at the office until it's actually out for real, because we can't risk our projects crashing and losing a bunch of work. We're just far too busy for that. So I would suggest either testing it out on a separate machine if you have one, or just sitting on your hands and being very patient and waiting until the full release is available. I know Chadwick from Creative Video Tips recently put out a video showing how he has 19 and 20 installed on the same machine. He is clearly a braver person than me, but go check that out if you want to take a chance, but just don't blame me if something goes horribly wrong. The other thing to keep in mind with this new effect is that we've been told it's going to be a Blackmagic cloud process, and that suggests you're going to have to pay some extra money. They haven't really given us any details for it yet, so I don't know if it's going to be something you would pay a monthly fee for or something you would buy credits for, but it's something to keep in mind. I don't think it's going to be something you're going to get for free with your DaVinci Resolve Studio license. And while we're on the subject of payments, in the announcement video, Grant did mention that eventually they would probably start charging for upgrades. Now, as someone who's been using the same license since 2018, and I've never paid a penny more, I honestly have no issue with paying to upgrade every now and then when you consider all of the work that's gone into improving the software every year. And while I can't say this with 100% certainty, the one thing I'm pretty sure of is that they're not going to be moving to a subscription model. Grant Petty has made his feelings about that pretty clear in the past. This is a quote from an interview he did with Forbes. "Cloud licenses are like slumlords," he gripes, referring to competitors Adobe and Avid. "You have to keep buying from me, and the more you're loyal, the more you'll get penalized. It's like your dog does something nice and you beat it with a stick." Seems pretty clear to me how he feels about software subscriptions. The second tool I want to talk about is the AI voice converter. With this tool, you either use one of the supplied voice models, or you supply a voice sample and then train your own, and then you can apply that model to a dialogue track. It will keep the dialogue's pitch and tone and inflections, but it will apply the sound of the model on top. There are some legitimately cool use cases for this technology. I spoke to a couple of people who are going to clone their own voices. They're going to go to a fancy studio with an expensive microphone and make a really nice, pristine recording. And then later down the line, if they're making videos with a not so great sound setup, they can just replace that recording with the beautifully recorded voice model and make it sound like they recorded the whole thing in the expensive studio. The example they used in the room involved taking someone with a strong accent and replacing that voice with one that was easier to understand.
This afternoon we've rigged up the Pixis on the gimbal.
I honestly thought that was a bit of a weird example to use, but I guess it just proves how well the technology works. Here at Visual+Aid, we make a lot of customer stories and interview-based content. And sometimes the people who are being interviewed just get something wrong. They might call the product a wrong name, they might just screw up a line they were supposed to say, and nobody catches it at the time. And so the idea that we might be able to fix that with a few clicks, rather than what we have to do right now, which is go through their interview and chop up little pieces and try to engineer the correct phrase. If we can actually take their interview and make a voice model and just get them to say the 3 words we really need them to say, that would be super helpful. Just as long as you get permission from the talent in advance, because that's the controversial part of this. It's a little too easy to just steal somebody's voice with this technology. If you use a website like 11 Labs, it's not a perfect system, but you have to try and prove you have permission. And you can also upload your own voice so they can flag it if someone else is trying to use it. Now you can just do this on your own computer. It's not going to the internet, it's all stored locally on your machine, which in theory is great for security because the voice you're creating isn't going to be living somewhere on the cloud for anybody to use. But it also means if you're a bad actor, it's going to be pretty easy for you to clone somebody's voice and then just use it on whatever video you want. My friend Darren Mostyn put out a video a few months back where he showed somebody had cloned his voice and made multiple videos with him doing a voiceover. He had nothing to do with them. He didn't know it had happened. Someone just happened to find the video and send him a message to let him know. So this is a very useful technology. It's a very controversial one. So please, if you're going to make a model, get permission from the person you're modeling first. Okay, I wanted to get all of that doom and gloom stuff out of the way early because now I want to talk about all the things I really like about this update. There's lots of cool new tools and improvements to tools that already exist. I'm going to start with things that I consider to be quality of life improvements that I think are really going to help me with my work. They've added a new UI layout for vertical video. Now, this is something people have been asking for a long time, and we still don't have a completely customizable UI, but honestly, I'm fine with that. I prefer knowing where my panels are going to be, especially if I have to jump onto somebody else's machine. But this is a very welcome addition. They've also made improvements to the Text Plus tool, and they've added the multi-text tool. This allows you to have multiple instances of text in one clip. And they can have different fonts or sizes or shapes. They've added circle text, and the thing I've been waiting for, which is text boxes, where they constrain the text inside a box. It's a small thing, but it means writing large blocks of text is so much easier to deal with. There's a new keyframe and custom curves panel. This is something I've been begging for so long, because until now, dealing with keyframes on the edit page was honestly a pretty awful experience. Anytime I wanted to do even basic animation, I found myself jumping over to Fusion because it was just so much easier. So now if I have something quick and simple I need to do, I can just stay on the edit page. This should pair nicely with another update. Now you can split a Photoshop file into individual files on the timeline. That's another thing I used to have to do in Fusion, so that's a very welcome addition. If you've created an audio transcription of a file, you can now export it with the speaker name and timecode information. I don't know why that wasn't there originally, but I'm so glad they made the change. They've integrated AI speed warp into the smooth cut transition to help disguise jump cuts. As someone who edits hundreds and hundreds of interviews and uses this tool all of the time, it was helpful when it worked, but you always had to hope the subject barely moved, and it would also sometimes create weird artifacts in the background surrounding them. So any improvement to this is very welcome by me. They finally added source tape to the edit page. Now this is one of the few things I actually use the cut page for. The edit page was just more comfortable for me and I rarely found any reason to leave it. This is a very helpful tool for going through mountains of B-roll and making string outs of selects. It's something I've been hoping they'd do for a while and they finally did it. They added a new voiceover tool for recording your voiceover directly onto the timeline. Now this was something you could do before using the Fairlight page, but honestly it's kind of a pain in the bum and so I never really used it. Now within a few clicks you can have your voiceover up and running. I do have to say though, I don't really understand why this is a slightly better tool on the cut page than the edit page. The big difference being you can put a script up on screen and play it back like a teleprompter. I would love someone at Blackmagic Design to explain why that only happens on the cut page and not the edit page. Maybe that's something they'll improve in the future. You can now add custom export presets to the quick export button. This was another thing that should have been there from the start, but it's better late than never. They've made brand new versions of the AI Magic Mask and AI Depth Map. These were already pretty impressive, but these new updates do seem to give cleaner selections and seem to be faster to generate. And speaking of AI tools, we do have a whole heap of new ones to play with. The first is IntelliScript. With this, you can import a plain text document of your script, and once the footage is transcribed, it will just do a rough cut for you, finding all the relevant parts that match your script, even if not every word is a perfect match. And it includes alternate takes that it leaves on other tracks, so you can audition them later. The demo was pretty impressive, but I do want to run some tests to pull it through its paces. Some of the edits are a little bit rough around the edges, so will absolutely need to be checked through. We also have AI Smart Switch. For people who cut a lot of long-form interviews and podcasts, this is going to be a massive time saver. It doesn't just listen to the audio, it also looks at the footage to see mouth movement to help it make the edit decisions. Just like in Telescript or the automated captions, it's not going to get you 100% of the way there, but it will get you pretty close. And then you can spend that time you've saved on the creative part of editing, rather than the laborious part of just going through hours and hours of material. For working with music, they've added an AI beat detector to help you snap cuts to the beat. They've also added an AI music editor. Now this is something we've had in Premiere Pro for a long time, and people have been screaming for it. You can either type in the duration you want, or you can just grab the end of the track and make it longer or shorter. They also give you multiple options to choose from. All the demos I saw worked really well, but they do make a point of saying this works best with beat-driven music, so it'll be interesting to see what happens if you try it with something more ambient. One tool that really got people's attention in the room was the audio assistant. Apparently now with a couple of clicks, Resolve is just going to mix your video for you. Now I was worried it was going to be a really destructive process, and I would definitely suggest duplicating your timeline just in case, but it does look like you can go back through and see what they've done and make any tweaks you think are necessary. But if audio mixing isn't your strong suit, or you just need to quickly knock out a version 1 for review, this could be a tool you'll reach for quite a lot. The Fusion page also got some updates. They've added multi-layer pipelining for OpenEXR, PSD, and stereoscopic 3D material. This basically means if you have a file made up of several layers, instead of importing them individually, now you can just reference whichever layer you want from one node. That's going to be incredibly useful for compositing, without having to clutter Fusion with multiple nodes for the different parts of your file. The vector warping toolset is going to be great for image patching or for cleanup work. Things like adding or removing logos to an item of clothing should be much much easier now. There are other Fusion tools that I don't use, but they seem incredibly important. Features like deep image compositing, support for crypto mats, 3D scene dome lights. I'm not a compositor, so these aren't tools I'm going to be reaching for anytime soon, but there were a lot of people in the room that seemed very excited about it. Okay, this isn't even close to everything, but the video is getting pretty long. If there are specific tools you want me to cover in depth, make sure you leave a comment below and let me know. I am legitimately impressed with what they were able to pull off. As Grant mentioned, they spent a couple of years just rewriting the code from the ground up, and that's enabled them to add significantly more features than I was expecting. There were some things I was hoping for on the Fusion side that didn't happen. I would love to see them improve the way you import vector files like SVGs. I would love those vector files to continuously rasterize when you resize them. The macro creation panel definitely could use some love. Let me know in the comments below which features you were hoping for that didn't make it in this release. Now, once again, this is a beta release, so please be very careful. If you're in the middle of a job, I probably wouldn't update. There's almost certainly going to be bugs and crashes. If you do decide to update, make sure you back up your projects and back up your libraries. If you open the job in 20, you can't then open it in 19 if you have to roll back. I hope you're as excited as I am to start working with DaVinci Resolve 20. Now, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of the deep dives I'm going to be making about some of these new tools. And I will see you in the next video.